make their buying decisions, both good and bad when it comes to rentals. And I've talked to a lot of people. I'm like, wow, that's a really cool strategy. And I've talked to some people, and it's like, you really are doing that? Good luck. So, today's been a crazy day. So tonight may be fun. I'm sure we'll have like microphone issues or anything like that. Who's here for the first time? About a quarter of the group. How did you guys hear about the group? Friend?
Online.
Online? Facebook or Meetup or?
Meetup.
Okay. Awesome. Well, welcome. So we've been doing this group about 3 years. And the purpose of the group has been to bring together investors of all different levels. So we have people that have never done a deal that are just getting started, to people that have done hundreds of deals a year, own thousands of rentals. Bringing everybody to a place where we can provide relevant real estate education in a safe environment without a bunch of sales. We're a no sales group. Our speakers don't get up here every month and be like, hey, let me tell you about this awesome program, and here's the fluff, but if you want the meat and potatoes, you have to buy my program. It's usually $2,000, but tonight, just for you, we'll discount it to $9.95. Anyone ever been to a meeting like that? It's frustrating because we're like, man, I took time out of my day to come to this meeting. I wanted the meat and potatoes, but now I get to pony up. So we don't do that. Our speakers teach. They share their experiences. Most of them are local. A lot of them do provide services, and they get a ton of business on the side just from educating people. But that's a big reason why we did the group, was just to provide that environment where you can network, meet people, and learn as well. There's some benefits. We've talked about that. Here's our disclaimer. You can read it. It's the same one we do every month. Here's a summary. Do your own due diligence. If you are buying a property or going to lend your money to someone or whatever you're going to do, don't believe everything the person that's trying to sell you that deal is telling you. Reach out to your own network. Pull your own numbers. Someone in here was looking at a property, and we talked last week, and you kind of crunched some of the numbers and talked about the area, and that's part of doing your due diligence. Speak with your professional circle. Reach out to your attorneys, your CPAs, and get legitimate advice. And then, like every investment, there's risk, and you may lose money. Just be prepared for that. If you have $100,000 in your retirement and you're putting all that money into a deal, you're probably not ready for a deal right now. All right, Tom, you got the mic. We did something in the past month since our last meeting. Did a flip. Give us a 30-second rundown on what you did.
Oh.
And Tom will help you with the mic.
Quick. A land contract purchased a duplex in Belleville.
Cool. Who else did something? Aaron did something. You can throw the mic.
Yeah.
You're going to get your extra. Tonight's all Q&A, so we're going to need a lot of participation from you guys. So Tom's going to get his exercise.
Just ended up getting a 4-unit building. Actually bought off of you.
It was my second best property.
So that was last week.
Cameron's beautiful. Just wait. 325 when it's done.
Too much.
No? You didn't do anything? No. Who else did something? Bought something? Evicted someone? All right. Couple of tools. If you have a smartphone and you're in Facebook, go find our Facebook page here. Just go search for Invest NWI Investor Group. We got these 2 chairs up here for you guys.
All right.
So the Facebook group's a really good resource. Who's in that group? Who's posted in the group? Was your question answered? Most of the time it is. It's a very active group. We probably get 2 or 3 posts a day. But we have people that are posting questions looking for contractors, questions about, hey, I'm buying something in this city. Can I do this? Who do I talk to in this city? What cities should I avoid? hey, someone last week posted a question, hey, I'm looking at buying this rental, do these numbers work? A lot of questions, hey, I need an electrician and licensed in this city, I need this. So jump on there. I do have to approve you. If you've been on Facebook for a week and you're from Nigeria, I probably will not approve you. So hopefully we have some friends in common to show that you're a legit person. I'm trying to keep the people out because I know in a lot of these investment types groups, there's lots of people that are going to spam us with junk. I probably get requests from people in Las Vegas that are private money lenders that have billions of dollars to loan out, but they all have Gmail accounts, which is interesting that they have all that money, but they can't afford to put together a real website. So that's a red flag there. So we're trying to keep those people out so people that are legit can be in that. So definitely be part of that group. Real quick on the membership, a couple of different options. If you don't want to do anything, you can just come and pay monthly. If you want a little bit of a discount on your monthly attendance, it's, what is it? I still remember last year's rates, and we're 11 months in. It's $120 for an individual, $160 for a couple. Couple of perks of being a member is I know we're all busy, we can't make it here every meeting. If for whatever reason you can't make it, there's a couple of options that you have to view the meeting. You can watch it live on Facebook. We're streaming live now. Hi, Facebook world. If that doesn't work for you, we record all of these meetings as well. And we have most of the meetings going back to 2017 when we started recording on the website. So if you sign up for a membership now, you can go back and watch nearly 3 years of meetings and all the different topics that we've done there. All right, who brought a guest? I have a whole bunch of raffles. This is going to be a fun one. Let's see. We got a couple more. All right, we'll do 4 today. This is to help with your Christmas shopping, or like me to buy some more winter clothes. Did you get a ticket? Okay, we'll get it. Hey Justin, I need another ticket. So we got a Kohl's gift card and a Dick's gift card to help you with your Christmas shopping, since that's like just over a month away. We got our coffee mug, and then we'll do a long sleeve shirt. Tom, you getting a ticket? Yeah. We'll talk more about it later, but next month we're going to have lots of giveaways. Who came to December last year? Only like 3 of you. 4, 5. Our December meeting's awesome. We'll probably have, and the giveaways that we do in December are big items. Because all the vendors bring items, and there's lots of different ways to get tickets. All right, so the first one, and just run up here if I'll say, I'll do the last 4 and you can pick your item. 6916. 6916. There we go. So pick a gift card, a mug, or you can do a t-shirt. All right. I think I threw that one back in. There we go. 6905. 69. You want another mug? I got plenty of those. 6907. $6907?
Right here.
Mug or t-shirt? It's a long sleeve too. There we go. And this will be 6899. 6899 for the win. There we go. All right, so tonight, again, this is going to be a lot on you. And we did this meeting just about 2 years ago, and it was fantastic because a lot of times when our speakers present, they're talking from their experience and what they want to talk about. And then I've had people come up to me after the meeting, hey, I need that contact info for that person. I didn't have a chance to ask this question or this question. And then they'll share their question. I'm like, man, that's a great question. I wish you would have asked it during the meeting. So outside of the first part here that I'll talk a little bit about, this is all Q&A. So we can be done in 10 minutes if no one asks questions, or we'll be here an hour. But this is your opportunity to ask any questions that you want rental related. And here are the topics that we're going to cover. We're going to talk about evaluating rental properties. We're going to talk about the make rate. So you just bought a property. What do you need to do to get it ready for a tenant? How nice do you make it? What kind of finishes? Whatever. Anything related to that. And then we're going to move into leasing. Leasing can be anything from how do you find tenants, how do you market, the application, the background check, anything related to that. And then the next part, repairs, consider that during occupancy. We're going to talk about anything that's related to the occupancy, issues with late pays, repairs, maintenance that comes up, emergencies, so anything related to when the tenant is living there. And then we'll go into tenant turnover. They leave on their own, they break lease, they don't pay, you got to kick them out. You tell them you have to paint the door, and you take the door, and then you never bring it back. Anything related to the tenant leaving, and then at the end we'll just have it wide open. So Tom and I will go around with mics. If you have a question, just put your hand up in the air, we'll get to you. But ask the question into the mic so that people on Facebook can hear that. And try to have your questions that you ask in the topic that we're talking about, so we're not bouncing all over the place. Is that fair? Awesome. So let's jump into evaluating deals. And like I said, I'm super analytical, so this is one of my favorite parts of analyzing deals. In my preference, the bigger the property as far as doors, the easier it is to analyze because the numbers make more sense as you get bigger units. But here's and I'm going to share a couple of scenarios here of things that I've heard talking to people, and this is a deal. I get this often. So let's say you're pulling in $1,250 a month in rent. Your taxes are $215, insurance is $90. So I have people that are like, man, I'm making $945 a month in rent. That's awesome. And I'm like, you're right, that is awesome. Who would agree that's a great deal there? Who would say that's not a great deal? We'll talk a little bit about why it is or isn't. It may be, we don't know yet. The big issue on that first one there is it's missing a lot of information. There's a lot of factors that aren't contributing to that. And that was my experience when I first got started because I didn't know any better. So we're going to talk about a couple of other things that you need to factor in when you're evaluating your rentals. I see this a lot too, and this just makes me bang my head against the wall. Monthly rent, $1,250. Their PITI, which is basically their mortgage, interest, taxes, and insurance, is $950. So then they're like, man, I'm making $300 a month in rent. And they're all excited. I'm like, that's a loser deal. Let's talk about some of the hidden costs that are affecting the ROI. A big one is repairs and maintenance. Who has had a rental property where they've never had to do anything? I mean, unless you've had it for, I just sold one. I had it for like 3 months. I didn't do anything. Actually, that's not true. We had to board up a hole where rats were coming in, right? See, I did something. Every property has repairs. Things break. Tenants aren't as nice to properties as you are. I have 4 kids. My kids are awesome, except they hang on towels and that pull the rods out of the walls. They are hanging on the cabinet doors and breaking hinges. They like to color on stuff. Stuff happens. Things break. Sometimes it's just normal wear and tear. Sometimes it's because of the tenants or their animals. So an average property, you're looking at somewhere between 5 and 10% of that gross income going towards repairs. 8% is basically 1 month of rent. So in the example I gave, $1,250, 8% of that is $1,250 a year in rent. That doesn't go very far when it comes to repairs. If they damage the carpet or something, $1,250 goes pretty quick. Another factor, these are also kind of repairs, but these are your bigger items. Your roof, your windows, your mechanicals. Most likely a tenant's not going to damage a roof. They're not going to damage your furnace. but over time, these things do wear out. So you can either plan for them, and then when it happens, it's not a big deal, or they're going to catch you by surprise and you're not going to factor it in. So depending on the condition of the property, 3 to 5% is an average number that you should be factoring in for your big ticket items. If you just did a massive renovation, like I had a property in Chicago, within the last 5 years, windows, roof, furnaces, all brand new. On that one, I can factor in a smaller CapEx expense, because chances are I'm not going to have to replace furnaces in the next 5 to 8 years anyway. Vacancy, it's not uncommon for a property to go vacant. Even when you get it ready, it's going to take some time to market it, it's going to take some time to put the tenant in it. The property that we sold Aaron, we had the tenant selected at the beginning of October. But because of their situation, they weren't ready to move in until November, so it sat vacant for all of October where we didn't collect any rent. And then property management, that's the only one on there that you may or may not need, depending on if you're going to self-manage or if you're going to use a property management company. So on average, you're probably looking at 20 to 30% of your gross income coming out because of these. Now, you may have a property that you don't have any issues with. The property I sold to Aaron, the year and a half we had barely any issues. I didn't have a ton of repairs. I didn't have a ton of expenses until we sold it and made it a little bit better. But that property is great. But then I have other properties where it's like constantly, the one across the street, every month I saw in the management statement I got from my property management, this had to be rotted, this had to be fixed, this screen was broken, this lock was broken, this door. In that property, but what I'm saying is, over the course of time and enough properties, you're going to have all of these expenses, with the exception of the management. So if you're trying to factor and make a decision on how you're going to purchase a property and run your numbers, you definitely need to be factoring these in. All right, so let's talk about how to calculate the net income when we factor these in. So this is the same example we gave initially. $1,250 a month in rent, that comes to $15,000 a year. This is going to be a property that you paid cash for, so you have no debt services, no mortgage payment. Taxes, $2,600 a year. Insurance, $90 a month. Repairs, we're doing at 10%. Vacancy, 8%. CapEx at 5%. So after you deduct all of that from the 15, that gives you $7,800 net income for rent. At the same time, and again, you may or may not have these expenses, you're effectively adding $3,400 a month, a year, into an emergency fund, so when those expenses do happen, you're prepared for them. This also follows the 50% rule, and I found this rule to be very, very accurate, and this allows you, when you're looking at rentals, to, without having to crunch all the numbers, decide right away if it's relatively a good deal or not. On average, 50% of your gross income will be taken up in expenses. And I've looked at my rentals over the last 3 to 4 years, and it pretty much is close to this number. So cash flow is one way that people buy rentals. So there are 2 different ways people usually buy rentals. Some people make their decision based on how much monthly cash flow they're getting. And then some people treat it as an investment, and they look at their actual return like they would if they had their money in a mutual fund. So back to this example here, this person would be getting $655 a month in cash flow. And I've seen people want anywhere from, some people are like, man, if I get $100 a month in cash flow, I'm happy. Some people are like, I need $600-700 a month in cash flow, I'm not buying that deal. So that's your own number. You got to decide what makes sense for you. This one here, I put in some debt on it. You can see $4,200 a month in debt. That drops the cash flow to $300 a month. But this person, and I'll go into the numbers in a little bit, refinanced out 80% of their money, so they only have 20%. So cash flow is down, but they have less money. So just another way to evaluate if that makes sense for you. The other way people evaluate a deal is return on investment. This is that percentage. I'm getting an 8% return, 10% return. This is how I do it, because for me, if I have, let's say I have $100 grand sitting in my bank, and I have to decide between buying a rental or throwing that money in a mutual fund, if the rental comes back and it's only a 5% return, well, that's horrible in my opinion. So I'm going to put that money in a mutual fund where I don't have to deal with tenants, I don't have to deal with dogs and evictions, and I'll go get 6, 8, whatever percent return there. So here's the deal. We bought it for 60. We put 25 into it, all in at 85. So let's go back to the net income that we had, which was 78.70. We're all in at 85%. You just divide that there. My ROI is 9.2%. And that's a very accurate ROI because I'm factoring in those expenses that may or may not happen. But this is kind of almost a worst case because chances are a lot of those expenses will happen. Now, this was the finance one, 20% down, 30-year amortization, 4.5% interest rate, which is probably a typical rate right now if you're getting a refinance on a non-owner-occupied property. So the net income was a lot less because you have your debt services that you have to pay for, but you only put 20% down, so your cash in is a lot less as well. Your ROI skyrockets. So that's why a lot of people do that burst strategy where they'll pay cash for it, rehab it, rent it, and then refinance out to get their money up and get a higher percent. Now again, that's up to you if that makes sense for you. I talk to a lot of people where they have a low level of risk, so for them they're more comfortable having cash-only properties. They don't have to worry about vacancies as much because if it's owned by cash, you obviously don't have mortgages to pay. And then I know people that are on the extreme, they want to do as many properties as possible, leverage them all now, and then get all the tenants paying down their debt. That's just a personal preference thing. There's no right or wrong way to do it. So what's a good ROI? What's a good cap rate? What's a good monthly cash flow? It all depends. Area is a big difference. Are you in Munster or are you in Gary? I can tell you if I'm buying in Gary, my ROI and my monthly cash flow is going to be significantly higher than in Munster because of the risk and the headaches and everything else associated with that. We already talked a little bit about this. Are you cash or are you mortgage? If your mortgage and your monthly cash flow is $100, that's probably a little bit tight because if you have 2 or 3 that go vacant, that's a lot of mortgages that you're floating on your own. Involvement too. As we go from turnkey to property management to you doing everything, your ROI should increase. When you're buying a turnkey property, you're doing nothing. It's a turnkey. Someone's already bought it. Someone's already taken all of the risk involved in rehabbing it and the unknowns. They've already placed the tenant, so you're buying something that's out of the box, ready. You collect cash flow from day one. You're probably looking at a 6 to 8% ROI if you're buying a turnkey, and you're probably paying market value, if not higher than market value, for that product. Now, and then the opposite end of the spectrum is where you're doing everything. You're finding a property, you're taking care of the rehab or hiring it out, you're dealing with a tenant, you're dealing with all that. Your ROI and cash flow on that one should be significantly higher because there's a lot more risk and a lot more time and energy involved. And then in the middle is when you use a property manager because they're doing some stuff, you're doing some stuff, so it's kind of in the middle there. Market conditions play a big factor into your ROI now. I know for me personally, stuff I bought 2 years ago, I was getting phenomenal returns on. It's not as easy to find those same deals today. So the big thing is whatever you decide, everybody in here is going to be doing things different. And I learned this at a marriage conference a long time ago. It's not wrong, it's just different. But whatever you, and she says that to me all the time, and under my breath I'm like, no, you're wrong. Whatever you decide, stick to your decision. Because when you're at a sheriff's sale bidding on a property or you put an offer on a house that's on the MLS and they're like, oh, it's multiple offer, what's going to happen is you're going to get all emotional about that property, and then here's your buying criteria. Now you're like, oh, I got to do this, I got to beat that person, I got to, and you get off your buying criteria, and that's when you lose money. So stick to your criteria and then make your buying decisions based on that. So was that helpful?
Yes.
Any questions on that?
So when you're doing your repairs yourself, do you have an hourly rate that you justify in your? We can't hear. Sorry. When you're doing the repairs yourself, do you have an hourly rate you justify in your numbers? I know it's variable, but
I don't do the repairs myself, so no.
anybody else?
I'll have my panel come on up.
You should. Your time is worth something.
Absolutely, but what number do you use?
I wouldn't go past labor if you want to give yourself a break.
40, 50 bucks an hour.
I was thinking 50.
Yeah.
You gotta crunch that in your numbers.
Yeah. Come on up. All right, no one wants to hear me talk anymore, so I'm going to get the panel up. And before we jump in, I'll let everyone give a 30-second introduction, what you do, how long you've been in rentals, and what your name is. Are you on?
You guys hear me?
Hello? Are you on?
Oh, no. Good? Good. My name is Mike DeBotchko. I'm a real estate attorney out of Crown Point. Practicing 6 years now, primarily focusing in rental, foreclosure, land contract, and tax sale law. I do a lot of work with a lot of big-time property managers, helping them with their tenants and basically the ins and outs. So when I come at this, I'm coming at it from an attorney standpoint. So if you have any questions as to what I'm looking at in determining, when to file, how to file, that kind of thing, I'm more than happy to answer those for you.
I'm Alex Stone. I've been in real estate about 2 years now, and I'm doing multi-units in Chicago. I've done some flips and self-managing.
I'm Cheryl Kerner, and I'm the property manager for Olson Property Services. I've been managing for a little over 2 years, and we're managing 200 properties right now.
My name is Luis Garcia. I work for Bogart Property Management. We've been doing property management for about 3 years now. Yeah, anything from maintenance all the way up, we do it all.
We got like 8 extra mics, and just so we didn't have to play this game of passing back and forth, but it'll work tonight, so we're gonna have fun with this. All right, so here's how we're gonna do it. If you have a question, raise your hand. Tom's gonna catch you and give you the mic. That way, everyone can hear your question. Anyone on the panel is free to answer the questions. We'll spend about 10 to 15 minutes on each of the 4 topics that we haven't covered there. So try to ask your questions within that topic. If I feel like we've exhausted that topic, then we will move on. So let's talk about make-readies. This is anything from you just got the property, what are we going to do?
All right, I'm Craig Carpenter. I have a question from a contractor's point of view. What is something you're looking for in a contractor when you have a tenant make ready and when you're preparing to rehab that property or just do general handyman repairs?
I would say from a property manager's perspective is that you would be able to do something quickly, especially when you have tenants in a property, so we have a short time frame to get that done. So it's just being available and being able to go at any time.
Good communication.
Yeah, that's the only nurse that'll miss. Good communication, being able to trust you as far as showing up, producing. We do quick turnarounds as well, so 24, 48 hours, just being available, really.
From my perspective, one of the biggest issues that I have is when I have clients come to me and say a contractor didn't do what they were saying they were going to do. It's because the contract between the parties was not itemized. I want a complete detailed itemization. What are you going to do? When's it going to be done by? What materials are you going to use? The more detailed, the better, because when that file reaches my desk, and you're saying he breached and he says he didn't, that additional level of detail really goes a long way in making that determination on whether or not you go forward or not.
As a property manager, do you look into like insurance and W-9s so that they can claim it, owner can claim it on their taxes? So if like a contractor comes in, they do something, they hit a gas line, do we look to see if they're insured before we hire them?
We have to have a current COI and insurance showing that they can. If not, once it's going to be going into cancellation, we let that contractor know that we will not use them until they have a current one on file.
For the work that's being done, whether it's the whole rehab or whether it's a quick turnaround, do any of the property managers or Mike, do you recommend that we use waivers?
Well, for me, the tough question because it depends on what kind of contractor you're dealing with. A lot of contractors sub out their work. So from a legal standpoint, there's two very different routes that the contractors have to go. If you're a general contractor, who here has heard of a pre-lien waiver. Anyone? Pre-lien waivers are general contractors are exempt from pre-lien waivers. They don't have to provide you that pre-lien waiver, which is kind of a lot of people don't realize. Subcontractors do. The reason being is you're contracting with the general contractor. So those waivers are, it depends on who you're dealing with. If it's someone you trust, I would, again, it just depends on how much you trust them, but if you want to let them do the work, the more detail, the better. Make sure that the contract is clear, make sure that you're paid, you have copies of the checks. Please don't pay in cash. That is the worst headache that I have to deal with because, again, he said, she said doesn't go very far. But as far as waivers go, if you can get them to sign them, I would.
I am a total newbie investor waiting for my first 5 tax liens to hatch, and I'm not the handiest person in the world. If I were to get connected with a property manager that also advertises themselves as a GC, is that a good idea for a newbie like myself, or will they see me coming in pants me?
Good question. Yeah.
Yeah, so with that being said, so with that, it's getting a feel for them, talking to them, walking through that. You have your expectations, you know your numbers, what you have to reach. You want to keep that in mind. Don't let your emotions drive that decision. Stick with your numbers, make sure that they are able to follow through with what they say. And then work from there. Really.
You guys have a checklist that you run through on a tenant make ready when you guys take over a property or take back a property that you're checking on every single one, and like what are you guys checking, I guess, when you're either taking over or taking back a property to make it ready for the next time?
So with us, if we're taking over a property that already has a tenant in it, we'll call them, we'll set up a meeting with them, get their information, load them into our system, talk to them about how to pay, go through a walkthrough and inspection, an initial inspection of the property while they're there, just get any immediate fixes that need to get done right away, get the other one set up for a later time, and just kind of get them in our system, get them in a flow, make sure you get a feel for the tenant, they know who you are, they know your presence is around. We do that. If it's a property that we're taking over that doesn't have a tenant, we'll do a initial walkthrough, see what has to be documented as far as what needs to be fixed. We'll set that up in an inspection report, and we send that over to the owner.
Yeah, we'll get the mic up there in a second. I'll walk it up as I ask my question. When it comes to rehabbing, I've done a bunch of things as far as splash some paint on a property and put a tenant in. Did some really nice rehabs with granite, new appliances. What's your opinion on how nice of a rehab to do for a rental property?
Depends on the area, but nicer is always better. It makes a huge difference in the quality of the tenant that you're going to get and the rent that you're going to get. Trying to rent a bad unit just
I can't really hear you well.
Depends on the area, but nicer is always better. Yeah. It's great, yeah. Move them in and then not have to go back all the time.
Can't hear you, man.
Can't hear you.
Yell at
Louder.
that thing.
He said maintenance free, make it ready before they move in, so you don't have to keep going back and fixing things.
My question. Can you hear me? Hear me?
I turned it off.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello.
What about building codes in the sense of smoke detectors? You know, if you have a new building, I would imagine that there's supposed to be irrigation, fire protection in there, all the way down to provides the carbon monoxide detectors. Once you invite that stuff into your rental, then you are required, I feel you'd be required to maintain that. But kind of looking at the legal issues of that, what's the best scenario?
Honestly, from my perspective, what I've told all my clients is it's honestly cheaper to comply with the code, wherever the code for that city may be, than to hire me later to come in and fix it. My goal is to save you as much money as I can. I don't want to bill you for things that you can do on your own. And one of those would be complying with code. I've had a hard conversation with clients who sometimes choose just to ignore the code, don't pull permits, that kind of thing. That would honestly be the worst thing you could do, because it will just get discovered, and the fines are not cheap for that kind of ordinance violation. So I would check with local code, check with local inspectors. A lot of these guys who are the local inspectors for the cities, as long as you treat them with respect, they're very, very easy to deal with. I have great relationships with a lot of these guys, simply because I'll call and ask them questions. Here's what my client's going through. What would you suggest? So I would say from the beginning, try to comply to the best of your abilities, because it's a lot easier for me to help you if I don't call and say, hey, I'm calling about this address, and the inspector goes, oh, I know who that is. You know, that's problematic. So.
How about smoke detectors in every room and carbon monoxide detectors is two different topics.
The city ordinances are very clear on what's required, and they're all available online. So I would just check. Every city's different. I would check, just read through them. They're all PDFs, honestly. At this point, you can just search for what you're looking for. It'll pop right up. It'll tell you where they're located, where they're required to be. Cheryl, you might even be able to speak to that a little more.
Yeah, and I would also say that our property management company does quarterly inspections. So when we go, we do check to make sure that the batteries are working, that the batteries are good. If they're not, we replace them. So we make sure all of them are in working order. So that is quarterly. We do the same checklist that we start when we bring a tenant in is the same one we use for each inspection all the way to the end.
Carbon monoxide
Yes,
detectors?
we always have that.
You have to do everything that's required, quarters on that.
Mainly looking at more of homes. A lot of requirements in my area don't have any codes to speak of for rentals. And if you take a 70s home, they don't have fire protection. I have put in fire extinguishers and stuff just for my own well-being.
What area are you in?
The Moss Wheatfield area.
Oh.
South of the river.
Yeah.
Different world.
Yeah, I think the answer would be the same. I would do your due diligence, because you don't want to find out you missed something. So as long as you're doing your due diligence, if there's no code to speak of, use common sense.
Yeah.
It's the best advice I can give you on that.
One thing we did change was we changed, instead of using a plug-in CO2, we make sure we use battery operated, because tenants will unplug it because they need that outlet. So we always use battery operated.
A few months ago, there was a lawyer that was actually here in the group. He posted a video and about how, I think it was the Indiana Supreme Court came down on set a precedent for a tenant or a landlord that wasn't taking care of their property. So as you're rehabbing a rental, and as your a repair comes up and you're not sure what are the fine lines, something like if a screen is broken or something, is that something that I need to spend $50-$60 and have my contractor go out there and fix that? Something along those. That's just a small example, but what is the line of repairs that need to be taken care of to where you can be held liable for them?
I don't think screens are required, but if glass is broken, that should definitely be fixed.
So the Supreme Court decision that you're referring, just for edification of the group, was about as bad as you could get. I'm not repairing it, I'm not fixing it, deal with it kind of landlord situation. I think that was an extreme. But that being said, you do have an obligation. Indiana code does require landlords to take certain precautions, make certain repairs to your property. It has to be heated. It has to, have electricity. It has to have water. You can't take the front door off. Ask me how I know that. I just got a phone call with that exact situation. There are certain things that you can and cannot do, and that Supreme Court case that he's referencing, I apologize, I don't have the site. Maybe you do, or I'm sure it's in the notes, but there are certain minimum requirements that you as a landlord have to have in order for your tenants to be able to have what's called quiet enjoyment. It's their right to live there. Their obligation is to pay you rent. Your obligation is to make sure it's livable. If it's not, they can move out, not pay you rent, and be held completely without cost. You can't go after them for that if the house is not livable. So just keep it up to code, keep it heated, please.
Section 8 has a checklist of what they require.
Yeah,
That's a good thing to use.
Mike, you say that, you got a tenant that keep breaking the faucet, keep breaking it, it's called every 3 weeks, and you have to come to fix it, 4 times. What are you gonna do?
So his question is what happens because his tenant keeps breaking things. Every lease that I've ever seen has a non-waste provision. Non-waste says you can't cause damage to the property. Pretty sure it's codified in our Indiana code too. If they're destroying your property, that's a breach of the lease. I don't care how current on their rent they are. If they're intentionally causing damage to your property, they're breaching the lease. It's considered waste of the property, and you can evict. And then go after them for the damages. Land contract's a little different. I can delve into that if you guys want me to, but why don't we just talk about it afterwards? That's fine.
Is there a carpet law in Indiana? You don't replace carpet so often?
Indiana's case law says that a tenant cannot be liable for ordinary wear and tear to a carpet. So if your carpet is 6 years old and your tenant's been there 6 years, your tenant is not responsible for replacing that carpet because you have to replace the carpet every once in a while. Same goes for paint. If there's no actual physical damages to the walls, legally you're not allowed to ask a court for damages. Now, if you do it and nobody objects, you get it. But if they object, most judges will say that it's normal wear and tear, and that's the landlord's responsibility.
I had a question about, just to piggyback on what he was saying about damages from the tenant. I had nice new stainless steel stove and refrigerator in one of my units, which I thought that the tenants would really appreciate. And when they moved in, I don't think they cleaned it from the day, cleaned the stove or the refrigerator from the day that they moved in. And it was grease piled up about 3 or 4 inches thick. And I had to, when they moved out, I had to get another stove and another refrigerator because the refrigerator wasn't cooling, who knows why. The stove wouldn't work because it was so much grease piled up. And should I be liable to charge, should I be responsible for just getting a new stove and refrigerator? Or should I charge the tenants for having to replace a stove and refrigerator?
Yeah, you should definitely charge the tenants.
Yeah.
I don't provide appliances for that same reason. The tenants just don't take care of them. But in the neighborhoods where my rentals are, it's not expected to have appliances provided. But in a lot of neighborhoods it is.
We do put refrigerators and stoves on our property, but I would deduct that from their security deposit. So I would not give them their full security deposit back.
And there's a difference between neglect and ordinary wear and tear. Let's go back to our carpet example. If your carpet has not been vacuumed and your dogs have been peeing on it for 6 years, that's not ordinary wear and tear, that's neglect. And at that point, we're crossing over the line from almost intentional damage by not doing anything. And so there's a distinction that can be made there. Again, the worst thing that can happen is ask for it, and the the worst thing that's gonna happen is the judge says no. But if, I've had those situations where, you know, it's just apparent that the person did nothing for 5, 6 years. And the judge gave us damages for it because you should be entitled to that. It's the, you know, 5 years of it hasn't been painted and it just kind of looks dingy, that you can't charge for. So there is a distinction.
Does anyone have any more questions about getting a property ready for marketing?
I just had more of a comment. So when you do property management, hi everybody, you're kind of at the mercy of the owner, and you have to accommodate them, but you have to offer a quality as best as they're willing to give. So what we do is we go through the property and we tell them everything that we would do, and they tell us what they're willing to do. So if you're asking us the question of getting a property ready, it's up to you. What are you willing to put in? You heard him. The better is nicer. You'll get a better tenant. They'll stay there longer. You could charge a higher rent. Or if you want to be some people, they don't want to do anything, not even paint. We've just cleaned the carpet and rented it like that. And it wasn't what we wanted. It's what they wanted. And we can't tell them, no, you're wrong, you're crazy. Technically, somebody will take it. They took a lesser rent. They were content. We have to make them happy. So from a property manager's perspective, we'll always give you a recommendation, but we'll only do what you ask us to do. Get it?
It was friendly advice about 10, 15 years ago. A gentleman in my area owns probably 50 rentals of his own, from houses to apartment buildings. And he owns a carpet company, so it was easier for him to put in flooring. He's gone to pure tile on everything, probably 15, 20 years ago, and he says it's still there. He does a lot of his rentals 100% tile. He knows how to make it look right. But one thing he taught me a long time ago, especially if you have carpet, which a lot of my properties do, paint the floors. You take that carpet out, go buy you some cheap paint, and you paint the floors. It seals the floors, because when they're not supposed to have pets in there, they'll get in there, and that will seal the floor. It provides many more years of that subfloor lasting. I've been doing it for years, and it does work.
We're also going to jump into leasing questions now too. So
guys,
anything from marketing the property to the lease, the application, background checks, you can ask that and make ready questions.
So you could itemize everything on your lease agreement for broken screens, busted doors, cleaning stoves. Yeah, you could itemize everything on your lease agreement. So broken screens, have a price for it. Paint, you could do like 60% the first year, 40% second. No repay on paint after the third year. Also, cleaning the stove at $100 cleaning fee, your lease agreement. You can have fees for all that in your lease.
He makes a good point. If the more in the lease, the better. If you have itemized list of damages and they agree to it, as long as they're not outrageous, I've seen what's enforced before, even painting.
It all comes out of your deposits.
Right.
People want the deposits back, so they take care of your property.
I'll be very truthful. The best way to protect yourself is take pictures. Take pictures of every aspect of that unit, including your light bulbs, everything. They get a copy, you keep a copy. Anything that you know that's damaged on that unit when they move in, record it on the lease. They sign it, you sign it. Any new objects are put on that lease.
I got some bad to that. You could also put make a walkthrough before they move in, and also you can leave it up to them to pick out anything that's wrong with the unit before they sign that lease, so it's notified from the day they sign.
I know it depends on the owner, but typically, do the owners have you guys repaint like every time a tenant turnover, even if it's 6 months and the paint looks good, or a year or so? I mean, I know it's probably going to depend case by case kind of, but is it just kind of a standard practice, or how do you case by case?
Yeah, that's a case by case, especially if it's only been a few months. They take care of the place for whatever reason. They leave for not being able to afford it or whatnot. If it looks good and you think you can rent it, we try to do that. But we obviously, with the inspection of the move out, before we get it cleaned out, or once we get it cleaned out and everything, before we start showing it, we'll document that in the inspection. That'll be uploaded to the portal for the owner to see. If he decides that he doesn't want to go through with the paint, then obviously we set that up for them. They say they want to try out for a little bit before actually going in their painting, and we can have to like that, go for it like that. So.
I got one more conjunction with that. Is it typical to just paint it white, or does it kind of depend?
I don't like white. I like painting it a color. That looks better. All white just looks so plain. Yeah. But with the repainting thing, you know, if it's only been a few months, you could probably just do touch-ups. If it's been more than a year or two, you'll probably repaint it.
I have a question. How much of a headache and damages, how much of a headache and expenses, or how much does it cost to take someone to court for damages to a property?
So, depends on what you're looking at. Small claims court, most lawyers have flat fees. Generally, those fees include the cost of going to court if you have enough volume, or I'm sorry, the cost of getting in possession. If you have enough volume with that attorney, I know I do a lot of my clients that have higher volume. That's just one fee for the whole thing. Because we're in court so many times, it doesn't make sense to have half of it be a flat fee and have half of it be an hourly fee. I would say if you have volume, including filing fees, maybe $500 to get your possession, do the damages portion of it. Collection is a whole new game. You'll ask, I don't know how many guys or women in here have judgments right now that they can't collect on, so that's a whole nother story. That's honestly the hardest part, as I'm sure many of these people will attest. But generally, that's what approximately is charged. And if you have a good lease, those fees are reimbursable through the judgment.
Question. So is there a cookie cutter document for lease agreements, or is it case by case basis to where everything is itemized?
Professionally, no, there's not a cookie cutter document. There might be subtle changes. Every legal document that I prepare is specific to each fact pattern. Some might be identical, some might not. It just depends. It depends on what the fact pattern is. If it's a standard boilerplate lease, you pay me rent on the first, and if you don't, you get out. Yeah, those are probably going to look pretty much the same. But all my leases are detailed to each fact pattern, just because not every fact pattern is the same. You may have different scenarios.
When it's time to go through a lease, like coming up on the end of the lease, or they're not planning on doing, are you waiting to do any repairs? Like, let's say you want to do the kitchen or the bathroom. Are you trying to get in there to save the time spent with no one's in there? So, like, you say they're coming up on their last month, and you start the renovation beforehand.
It's hard to work when they're still living in there. You have to wait till they move out.
And trust that they won't damage what you're doing. How will you do that, right?
Is that mic on?
Yeah, Tom.
When you're asking questions in that mic, talk into the mic. Don't hold it below your chin.
Can't hear anything back there.
That's what we're working on. Maybe you should move up. That might help a little bit.
Can everyone hear me?
You're good. Just talking and hold the mic, hold the mic horizontal, and then that will work.
In regards to lease clauses, is it legal to have a default clause in Indiana where you can take possession if they?
You mean like a confession clause where you can take possession without a court order? Is that what you're talking about? No. No, you have to have court authorization and a representative of either the court or the local sheriff or local PD to assist you in taking possession. There are no self-help evictions.
Okay.
Is there a typical scenario for a tenant who has broken the lease and has no cause or just cause to do that? They just decided, I'm done renting, I'm out. Maybe you got a 2-year lease with 11 months left on the lease. What's your recommendation from a legal standpoint and a property management standpoint how to handle that?
From a legal standpoint, you're required to mitigate your damages. Your damages, of course, are 11 months of rent. So your duty as a landlord is to find someone to replace that tenant. Now, if you can find them, let's say you find them 1 month later for the exact same amount of rent, your damages are 1 month's rent. You can't then bill them for the whole term. If you find them for $100 less per month, and you find them the day they move out, now it's $100 a month. You're short for 11 months. So it just depends. But your duty is, from a legal standpoint, is to find someone to try and lower your damages. Sorry, I think you had a 2-part question. From a property management standpoint.
Just the property manager's experiences on tenants that leave early. Do you have any successes or any recommendations on how to handle that?
I've held people responsible until I can find a new tenant and then let them know.
Also, we have, in our contract, if they break a lease, they're paying a early termination fee.
Yeah.
So it is equivalent to 1 month's rent plus processing fee, which would be another $200.
Okay.
And then usually that's added to if I have to take them to court.
So it's kind of like their buyout.
Right.
Okay. Excellent.
What do you guys find to be the most effective way marketing for tenants? Either, and by effective, get the best rents, get the fastest occupancy?
Facebook.
Ours has been. Facebook has been really good for us, and when we do over 100 different sites as far as Craigslist and everywhere else that we could post, but primarily Facebook and Marketplace has been really good for us. We do 2-year leases typically for apartments. That just gets the tenants to stay longer. Typically, the tenants that stay longer will take care of the place as well. And then we do quarterly inspections as well. So we build that relationship in those quarterly inspections so that we are proactive as far as maintenance requests can go. A little bit better than being reactive and like damage just kind of cuts through there.
So if I'm not using a property manager and I'm screening these applicants myself, and I do the background check and I make sure they have a job and I talk to references, is there anything else I should be looking for that's going to present red flags that maybe I'm not thinking of in the screening process?
Yeah, for the screening process, I use TransUnion Smart Move to screen. I look for no evictions, no felonies, not a high amount of constant collections, things like that. Beyond that, their income, 3 times monthly rent, and then just meeting them. You kind of get a feel for people when you meet them. I've had people that I knew they weren't the one. I tried to steer them away from renting it until I find somebody better.
Yeah, so we look for, Yeah, so we look for 3 times the rent rate as well. We're looking for, like you said, any evictions in the last 7 years. But meeting the person is a big, it's a partnership that you're agreeing into. Even if it's for a year, for however length the lease is, you want to make sure that you are compatible with that person because you're going to be in it for the length of the lease. And you want to make sure that you guys are compatible together as far as going back and forth, being able to communicate, having a good feel and vibe with the person.
So if I can expand on that, I recently listened to a Bigger Pockets podcast where the guy literally goes into the person's home to see how they're currently living. Is that crazy?
No.
I've heard people say that too. That sounds kind of extreme. Some people say they look inside their cars and things like that too, but that's kind of extreme.
I have gone on Facebook.
Yeah, I Facebook
Find out if
stalk.
they're partners or, you know, if they have 10 pets.
Question. I decided to do like a video file from now on. Every time when I take a tenant in, I'm gonna take a camera and start to do video. He turn the switch on, off, light, water, everything. Did he need to sign a paper before I do the video with him?
You own the property?
Yes.
No, it's your property.
Yeah, but this is space.
That's more for advertising.
You have to get a picture, the judge to see it.
And I don't pretend like I am that field of lawyer. I don't know that answer, I suppose. Like, I would think you should be fine because you're not using it to make money. But I would think that's fine, even if they're in it, or tell them not to be in it.
So kind of back to the checking people's houses. I mean, I spent 15 years as an auto mechanic. And I can tell you now that I buy houses, I can tell you that their cars and their houses mirror each other. So if you look at their car, and it's a piece of junk, not so much a piece of junk, but if the inside is full of garbage and they don't take care of it, the house probably looks the same. I mean, we screen tenants in the past on Facebook too. I would just caution against that a little bit, because I know you guys are saying like steer people and things like that. You start to say things like that, you start to talk discriminatory. So find reasons to eliminate somebody, for reasons that are legit, like, the only thing they post on their Facebook is guns and drugs and, like killing people stuff or, whatever. Don't just be like, hey, this guy's a jerk, so I don't want to rent it to him, because I've had some people that are real jerks that pay the rent every month and they take good care of the property. So
I also use that though just to see if they have a pit bull. There are certain insurances that do not cover that, and they're not always. I actually had a tenant that hid their dog, and come to find out they had 2 pets, so they weren't paying that $250 non-refundable pet fee plus that monthly rent. But just making sure that you find out what your insurance covers. There are many pets that I didn't think they wouldn't cover, but German Shepherds, Huskies, I do have a form they have to fill out by their local vet stating this is their dog, a picture, how much it weighs, and it has no form of pit bull in it. It can't even be a mixed.
There's a Supreme Court case on that. Landlord didn't know tenant had a pit bull. Insurance had an exception to their policy for a pit bull. Pit bull got out and bit someone, no coverage. Even though the landlord didn't know. So it's just something, it's good to follow up on that.
I have a question. Do you guys have like a website service or like software to where you can syndicate a rental like listing? Could you give any recommendations?
I actually use Buildium. I use Buildium and Rently. They are integrated. So I can post in Buildium and then just pull it straight over. It goes to so many different sites. And it also pulls, even if you were to change your cost or something you did different, you're running a promotion, it will go back to all the people that originally looked at that property. So it's a very good system.
is anybody using Cozy? I think it syndicates it a little bit, doesn't it?
Realtor.com does.
Which one?
Realtor.com syndicates Cozy.
I just used
Buildium and Rently. So Bill, I-U-M, Buildium.
good copies as well.
Well, I just used avail.co for listing the rental, and they also do some management services as well. There's a newer service that I heard about on Cashflow Ninja.
Worked pretty well.
What's a typical pet fees per month?
For me, it's based on, it's a $250 non-refundable pet fee for one pet. If there's a second pet, it's $50 extra. After that, it's dogs up to 20 pounds is 25, up to 30 or 40 pounds, it's 35. And then the owner will decide if they want a pet over that, and it's $10 extra for 10 pounds. So depending on the weight of your dog.
So
Also, if I'm dealing with someone that has a puppy, I do put that in my lease that I reevaluate them in 6 months from their pet because their weight will go up. So I do evaluate it in 6 months.
So Northwest Indiana, like a Class B neighborhood, typical renter type neighborhood, is there a stat or a percentage? I mean, you're talking about all these terrible renters. I mean, how many of them are actually bad if you do your vetting properly?
10%?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a percentage, I don't think. I mean, I've had.
Like, how much should I figure in for CapEx expenses if somebody kicked holes in the wall?
I don't think, not many are that bad.
And again, if you do, that's one of the reasons of having quarterly inspections. So if you have a quarterly inspection and you're going in, I'm using the same checklist that I start with, and I magnify or I match it. So if there weren't holes there before and there is now, I'm fixing that and charging you on the ledger. And you will take care of it at that time, not waiting till the end of the lease.
I would say, I mean, even 10% might even be a little high. 95% of my eviction cases, they just didn't have the money to pay the rent. It wasn't because they were destroying the property. We go in, we take pictures. The properties look lived in, but they're not intentionally damaged. That's a rare circumstance.
Okay, it's not like they're tearing holes in things.
Right.
More like
Unless
just
you
annoying.
really piss them off.
So I had a question back to the animals. So if a tenant has a pit bull, you've asked, done your due diligence about what animals they have, but you didn't know and invite somebody. As a landlord, are you liable, or that tenant is liable for that animal, right?
Depends on which insurance you have. Depends on which one they ask. It's not a landlord's liability. No, it's a homeowner's liability. The question is whether or not your insurance will cover you when someone does. Because if I have a client that comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm walking by this house and a dog comes out and bites my arm off," I'm suing everybody. Like landlord, tenant, insurance, everyone's getting the nod on that one, and then it's to them to figure out who's liable. I say no, landlord's not liable. Again, it depends on what the fact pattern is. Does the landlord know the dog was there, even though they said it couldn't be there, and they just kind of ignored it? It's a very fact-sensitive thing, unfortunately. There's no good answer to that one.
We do have it in our lease, though, that if we do find out you have that pet, we have the right to evict you from that property. You
Yes.
have broken our contract.
A lot of leases have that, which is important if you don't want them to have pets.
So recently, there's been some changes with the eviction court in Hammond isn't taking on new cases. They seem pretty fast and efficient to get people in and get evictions done. Can you kind of shed some light on how quickly the other courts kind of move on that?
I will. I want to stay on path with these guys' plans, so we will get to that here shortly.
That's a great question. Let's move into occupancy questions. So these are questions, properties occupied, you got maintenance issues, you need to get in, anything dealing with someone living in the property.
So if you have, So if you have a tenant that has been paying their, just say NIPSCO since it's getting cold, and found out they've been still in NIPSCO and pipes gets busted because of the freeze up, are they responsible, or should you put that in the lease? That they'll have.
If they're still in NIPSCO, good luck collecting from them anyway, so that's problematic in and of itself. If they're stealing from NIPSCO and they're not paying for NIPSCO, they're not paying you and they're not going to pay you. That's just generally how I've kind of seen it. I would just be proactive. Stay in communication with your properties, make sure that everything's on. You get disconnect notices. So if you get disconnect notices and they're still there, they're probably still in NIPSCO. So I'd probably just follow up.
When I got my duplex, I had been asked about Section 8, and I've never been qualified to accept Section 8. Can you guys address, like, how does that work? Because I've not done that. So.
I only have one tenant, and I inherited that tenant, so I would say you have.
Like, do you have to go through a whole application process?
Yeah, you have to go through a process with them. If you advertise that you're accepting it, you need to rent it, it has to meet their standards, which they publish. Tenant comes with a voucher, you fill out the voucher, and then it's not a whole lot different than renting to somebody else, but you kind of have a third party involved that has a say in it too. So it's a little more work to get people in, but Section 8 people do tend to stay longer sometimes.
They do. Are the inspections annual?
Yeah,
Annual inspections to make sure you're still in there.
As far as rent, is there any kind of discounted rate I have to give them, or?
No, it's market rent.
Market, okay.
The only difference is they pay a percentage of that
Okay.
rent, so your voucher isn't paying for the full rent.
Okay.
Well, if it's not market rent, Section 8 will pay based off what market rent is.
Okay.
So if you're charging 900, market rent's 800, and Section 8 is paying 50%, they're only gonna pay 400.
Right.
Mike, can you talk about, and I've been guilty of it too, but I see a lot of people taking partial payments from tenants, which is a no-no, and kind of, when they file bankruptcy, what happens with that if you've taken partial payments and kind of, at least like one story I've heard is the landlord was got stuck paying utility bills, everything on the property, and the tenant didn't have to pay for like 2 years of a Chapter 13.
Yeah, so taking partial payments, just know ahead of time that they're going to claim that you accepted it, you waived the breach, and that's a tough argument to make in court, especially in front of judges, which in Lake County, a lot of our judges are pro-tenant, just to be blunt with who they are. If they can find a reason to let them stay, they will, especially around the holidays, especially when it's cold. As far as the bankruptcy goes, and I don't do a lot of it, I've done some of it, but you can get relief from that bankruptcy stay that prevents you from evicting them. A tenant has no right to remain in the property. The bankruptcy judge can have them removed. You have to hire a bankruptcy attorney who knows what they're doing, and they can get you permission to remove them from the property. Now, it's going to take 60 days, 90 days, but it can happen. That's not going to get you rent, though. Your rent you have to claim in the bankruptcy, which is, again, why I say get a bankruptcy attorney. Because you have to file a claim in the bankruptcy for the money owed. You can't collect from them when they're in bankruptcy. You're prohibited. It's a pretty big issue if you attempt to. But as far as getting possession goes, you can do it, but you've got to stop taking rent payments. Especially if they're in a bankruptcy, do not accept any money. That money has to go to the trustee anyway of the bankruptcy. So if, worst case scenario, I don't know if you ran into this, but if you're accepting rent after they file bankruptcy, trustee finds out about it, trustee's again going to write you a letter saying, hey, you owe me money. And you do, there's no exception. You have to give that money to the trustee. So 3-4 months down the line, you're going to be out of pocket some money if you're accepting it.
What's the minimum amount of time I need to notify a tenant if I need to access the property?
24 hours. Communicate with them in a way that you normally do. Text is fine, Facebook's fine. As long as you do it normally and they respond, you can continue using it. There's really no rule of thumb.
The property management company that I'm using does facilitate to accept Zelle payments. So if I've started to evict, or if I'm not wanting to take a partial payment, at least this particular property management group, they just do the front end. They don't have any way of blocking the Zelle payment. Do you guys know any way to block a Zelle payment? And if they do pay on Zelle, can we refund it right away and not be considered that we accepted that partial payment?
I don't know. I don't think
I use Zelle. I don't think there's any way to block it. I've had people send me a partial payment that way.
Send it back.
And yeah, you could
just send it back.
And
you think the court would recognize that?
The only other thing is, like, let's say they're being real stubborn and they just keep sending it. Put it in, give it to your attorney. Come put it in their trust account. Have their attorney write them a letter saying we're no longer accepting rent. I have your partial payment in my trust account. Come get it when you want it because we're no longer accepting rent. And as long as it stays in that account separate from your normal funds, judge will look at that and say, yeah, that's good enough.
Perfect, thanks.
The software that I use, Buildium, I can literally go in and shut off your account so they can't go on and make a payment.
On Zelle?
No, I use Buildium, so I can go in and shut that account off so they can't. The software that I use, Buildium, I can go in and shut it off.
Does that allow you to only take full payment then, or is it still?
I don't take, if I'm not taking a payment, I just shut it off so they can't make any payment.
I tell all my clients, Yeah, if you want them out, I know money coming in is great, but don't take it. It just makes it harder to get them out.
Another new guy over here. If I purchased a property and on the purchase agreement it was stated that it was supposed to be a legal 2-unit in Hammond, and now once I already have the property and switching everything over to my name, I basically didn't do the proper due diligence. Am I like SOL, or can I go after the person who sold it if that was part of the purchase agreement, or?
So your question is, it was advertised as a 2-unit, but it's not?
Correct.
Or at least legally not?
Yeah, legally it's not.
All sales disclosure forms have residential sales disclosure forms have a thing that says everything that in my property was built pursuant to code. So that would be your prong that you go after them on. Obviously, if it's an illegal 2-unit, that's not per code. And if they're saying it is, then that's a problem. Again, I feel like you called my office earlier. I just had this phone call. So
it wasn't me.
Yeah. So the answer is, again, everything's fact sensitive, but that is how I would look at it. I would look at their sales disclosure form, see if they said it was permitted. If they said it was, then they breached the contract, and technically it probably committed sales disclosure fraud. So you could get trouble damages for that and attorney fees if everything goes your way. Of course.
If in a tenant situation, the tenant's living in a property and you decide that a seller wants to sell it, the property, how can you go, I don't know, maybe it's partially a leasing question too. Can you put something in the lease so when they're occupying it, you decide to put it on the market, you can take pictures, and they're not going to have some repercussions where you stick it on MLS, and then it shoots out to the internet, and then their actual unit is online. Has happened twice. I told this guy I want to sell the property. I came, I took pictures, I was in the MLS, and then like 2 months later I got called for the time they were living because their unit was on the market while they were living in it. So the pictures were on the internet. And I understand, you know, in retrospect, I let them know, but like the one woman was in Gary, so that made me feel like she could possibly see and break into her house. And then the other one, I told her I was going to put it on the internet. It did not like register, and so they were both very upset. So I thought, is there some kind of way? I could have gotten in trouble for that. Did I violate something? I didn't really know. I wanted to put something in the lease in case I do want to sell it in the future. That I don't have that happen where say no, you can't put my unit on the internet.
And you have a reasonable right of inspection. I would say that would probably fall under that category. Leases can't cover everything. You have a right to go on your property and inspect. If you're selling a property, you have a right to sell it. I would say use caution because you don't want to upset someone who retaliates. I would talk to them and say, look, I'll be as discreet as possible. If you don't want anything in the picture, I understand. I would try and coordinate with them. But legally, you have a right to take pictures of your property and you have a right to sell your property. I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with this, but I would personally just try to talk to them and see if you guys can't work something out.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I just attended a seminar and there was an insurance agent there, and he suggested, I thought this was a great idea, that on the lease, he requires the tenants to have renter's insurance, all of them. And then he somehow has them so that his name has to be on the renter. So should they decide to stop the rental insurance, then he has notification of that. So that's part of the lease that they have to have renter's insurance. That's a good idea. Is that something that you do also?
We do. And actually, you have to show that to me before I give you the keys now. I used to wait, and it would take longer to get that, but you have to show me that before. We put them as an additional insured, and then that will come to you when it's going. If they haven't paid, you get the notification. And then I let them know that they're in breach of our contract if they don't have that renter's insurance. It also helps us if they have damage of any kind. We also help them through that process of making a claim, making it easier for that tenant. So,
we actually have some policies, or have some properties with pit bulls in them, and State Farm will cover pit bulls on a renter's policy, and then we just make sure they add us as an additional insured. So I don't really care what their dog does.
It's a Labrador, dude.
Yeah, well, the property manager said it was a lab, but it was them.
Nice.
So what's your kind of system in regards to dealing with noise complaints in multis? So like tenant A says tenant B is too loud, tenant B says tenant A is too loud.
I go take them out.
Both?
You have to be a babysitter sometimes. Yeah, same question with marijuana use. I mean, we get that a lot in multi-units. You know, I joked with Luis like one time, like we should just make them all weed buildings or non-weed buildings.
Just a question and a note on insurance. Also, the additional insured, my understanding is from my State Farm agent that if the claim comes in on the house and it falls on the renter's insurance, they'll exhaust the renter's insurance first before they'll come after my insurance. That was a point from the State Farm person. The other thing is that a lot of the renter's insurance policies cover like $100,000 in coverage, but for $10 extra per month, they can get coverage for $300,000. So the question is, in the contract, can I put down that we require to be additional insured and minimum coverage of $300,000? Does that pose a problem?
No, your contract can say whatever you want. And back to this gentleman's question, I'll customize your release to say whatever you want it to say.
Right.
You want $300,000 coverage, you want $1 million coverage, we'll put it in there. If they sign it, they have to do it. That's pretty much how they work.
And then the last point on the additional insured, not only should they notify you if the tenant doesn't pay, I don't know that they're required to, but a good insurance company I do believe will. But let's say that the tenant had caused damage to the unit. If the tenant has the renter's insurance just in their name without your name as the landlord as additional insured, the insurance company will actually cut that check to the tenant. And if that tenant decides it's a good day to move on, keep the check and run, they're going to run. If you're on as additional insured, they'll actually write the check out to you and the tenant, right, which is another good reason for additional insured.
I was just wondering if those like your home solution type warranty things, are those even worth it, or where they like cover the furnace, your pipelines, gas lines for rental properties and stuff like that?
I've never used one now.
All right.
Hi, I have a couple of questions for each of you. Property management, 10%, is that off of the total amount collected annually, including vacancies? How do you charge a 10% fee?
It's off of rent collected.
Just rent collected alone. So if you've got 300 units, it's at 10% off what's collected, not including the vacancies. Okay. Another question. If I just took over a possession of a judicial sale property, and
like sheriff's sale?
Yeah, sheriff's sale. Okay. And I have a tenant in there, and I need to evict them. There's a process. Can you walk me through that process and how that works?
So sheriff's sale process. Sheriff sales can go one of two ways. There is a provision in our statutes that allows a purchaser of sheriff's sale to have the person removed. You have to file a motion with the court that enters the foreclosure and authorizes the sale. It's called a writ of assistance. There's no filing fee. Technically, if you're an individual, you don't even have to have a lawyer to file it. It's called a motion for writ of assistance. You're asking the judge who foreclosed on the property to give you permission to have the sheriff have them removed. Now, the sheriff, as of July 1st, I believe, of this year, they charge $100 to do that. They used to be built into the filing fee. It no longer is. So if you need to have the sheriff help you out, then you got to pay them $100. You could also file an eviction. Depends on which judge you have. It could be faster, but it of course costs more money because with an eviction, there is a filing fee. Both will get them out. One of them will be faster, but maybe more expensive. The other one will be possibly slower. Again, it depends on which judge you get. If you're in, there are some judges who are notorious for setting everything for a hearing, no matter what you do. So you're waiting at least 30 days at that point. Whereas eviction courts, which this gentleman asked me about, and we'll get to here in a second, you can get them out in 2-3 weeks for a higher fee. But does that answer your question?
And one more thing. So I had a tenant move in, prorated his rent October 28th. People finders paid them a 1-month rent for finding me the tenant. They paid me their 1-month rent, bounced. Now we are in November bounced, and also, I mean,
you're still there?
Yeah, they put it again. They're there, but so now I feel like, all right, there's no recourse to go back to apartment people to say, okay, look what you found me.
Sure.
The credit score was a 604. It's actually a contractor, and what do you do?
I would look at your apartment people contract. I feel like there might be something in there that'll, well, if they prepared it, I'm sure there's probably not much in there you can go off of. But there might be, you never know. I don't know without looking at it. But I did just think when I was answering your first question, I did leave out. When you purchase a property, not through a judicial sale, that tenant has a right to stay. In a foreclosure, that tenant has no right to stay, so there is a difference there. I want to make sure that I'm being clear that what I'm telling you only applies to a foreclosure sale where you're buying it because the prior owner didn't pay their mortgage. If I sell her my house and it's got a tenant in there, she can't walk in and kick the tenant out. The tenant has a right to be there as long as they're paying their rent, complying with their lease. I want to make sure that's clear.
If they don't have a lease.
If they don't have a lease, they're technically month-to-month tenants. You have to provide them at least 30 days notice, and then you can have them removed.
One thing we've also done in the past is if we wanted to try to get them out because we want to either rehab or whatever, we've offered them a buyout or whatever you want to call it.
Cash for keys.
Yeah, right, cash for keys to get them out in a certain amount of time, and they usually want it, so you can usually get them out quicker that way.
Plus, then there's no eviction on the record, which most tenants acknowledge how important that is.
Hold on, let me, Mike, since we've talked about evictions a couple of times, there's been a lot of changes going on, specifically in Lake County with the courts. Why don't you take the time and go through the different court systems, what the requirements are to file, and anything else that would be helpful with the different options we have.
So Hammond is shut down. If you've used it, unfortunately, as of September 30th, they're no longer taking on filings. That has been defunded, so now we have to look elsewhere. Other city courts are adapting, though. I was talking to Adrian earlier today. He was telling me about Hobart City Court, which, I'll be honest, I didn't even know Hobart had a city court. Because I don't use them, and I don't think that it's really a benefit to my clients. I called them today. I have heard some horror stories just from talking to other attorneys. They are modifying their rules to try and adapt to take on the volume that Hammond has lost. So they are doing 2-week evictions. They are so, and I don't want to bash a municipality, but the phone call I had with them today was not encouraging with how organized they're going to be with it. I asked them, when do I have to have my filing in if I want a hearing? They do hearings on Wednesdays, just like Gary. And I asked them, when do I have to have my filing in? And she wasn't sure. So I'm sure they'll work out the kinks because, like, she even told me on the phone today, they're taking on all this volume. They're kind of learning as they go. If it were me recommending to a client, I would maybe not go there right now. There's Gary City Court. Gary City Court is maybe one of the better ones. They do 2-week evictions and same filing fee as all these other courts. They do 2-week evictions. If you get your complaint to them by noon on Friday, you'll have a hearing like 10 days later. I think their hearings are Wednesday also. So Gary City Court is doing 2-week evictions. The good thing about those courts is that is honestly the most landlord-friendly court I've ever been in. They don't really take a lot of excuses. If you didn't pay your rent, you got to get out. With the benefits that go with these city courts, there are obviously some downsides too. So Who here has got a tenant that they're maybe thinking about evicting in the near future? Anybody? Yeah. Who knows what the moratorium is? All right, landlord's worst enemy. Good reason, but from December 13th through January 10th, I don't care what your eviction order says, the sheriff will not remove them. There's a 30-day period where you cannot get a tenant out no matter what your court order says. Now, once that period ends, sure, the sheriff will go out and remove them. Gary follows that. Hobart says, and again, this is why I lack the confidence, she says, no, I don't think we follow that. Take that with what, as, you know, grain of salt, I guess. Yeah.
So when you say Hammond is closed, does that mean if you had an eviction and is it seasonal or they've closed because
They are.
So then,
Close.
if you had a Hammond property that needed an eviction, can you then go to another city? Is that what
You
you're
can file
saying?
wherever you want, as long as it's in Lake County. So our court does evictions by county, not by city. I've done Gary evictions in Hammond. I've done East Chicago evictions in Crown Point.
Wow.
That part doesn't matter. As long as you're in Lake County, the property's in Lake County, you can file it in that county or city court. The good thing about Gary is, you know, let's say you walk into one of these disaster properties we're talking about, you've got $15,000 in property damage. Crown Point's court, the Superior Court, Hobart's court, Hammond's court, Gary, any other Superior Court has caps your damages at $6,000. Gary Court does not. Gary Court does not have a cap on damages. So if you've got a substantial amount of damages, you can get a higher judgment through Gary Court because it's not considered a small claims case. They consider it a civil collection case. Downside to all city courts, and actually a lot of my landlord clients have no idea that this is true. When you get a judgment, everyone here who's tried knows it's incredibly difficult to get these people who were not paying you rent to pay you rent later on down the road through a judgment. It's hard. It doesn't happen. So a lot of people will get paid their judgments through, if they sell a property. Any judgment in Lake County, Indiana, attaches to any piece of real estate owned by a person. If I have 10 houses, and on number 11, I owe you $1,000 or $5,000 in rent, if I sell any of the first 10, you're getting paid through those first 10, even though it had nothing to do with the lease over here. The problem is, if it's a city court, Gary City Court, Hobart City Court, Hammond City Court, under Indiana law, those are not liens. Those are not considered judgment liens. You have to actually register it with a circuit or superior court if you want to get paid through the method that I just described. It's doable, but you have to proactively go do it. That's the downside to city courts. Crown Point has the main courthouse that I'm sure you're all familiar with. The complex they do, there's 2 different small claims courts. There is no additional step. You get a judgment in those courts, which are capped at 6. You get a judgment in those courts, and that's it. They're judgments, and you don't have to take any additional steps. They are also doing 2-week evictions. Well, one of them is. It requires a personal service, though. You have to actually hire an outside party to serve the person in person, not put it on their door, not put it on their car. It's as you've seen on TV, you know, are you Joe Smith? Yes, you've been served. That's what we're talking about. If you don't get that, you don't get that 2-week hearing. City courts, they'll just have their police guy go put it on the door and call it a day. So, you know, there's benefits to each side, there's detriments to each side. Yeah.
So when you look at your Smart Move report and it shows this prospective tenant has an eviction, does the eviction get on that record that TransUnion picks up based on a judgment or on a court case, or how does TransUnion know that person has an eviction? And more importantly, if I had a tenant that I wanted to make sure that eviction got on their record, how do I go about that?
My guess is they have an algorithm that searches docket systems,
okay,
and they look for anything with a small place or a CC. Those would be the cause numbers that would have an eviction.
And is an eviction technically when the sheriff physically removes them? Is that the only definition to eviction?
No, an eviction would be a judge ruling that possession of a property is changed over to the owner or the landlord or the management company. Whether or not you execute on that is irrelevant.
Okay.
If it's entered, it's considered an eviction, even if you let them stay. Yeah.
Hold on. Let her take a question here.
Oh, I'm I'm sorry.
This speaks to the tenant turnover, of course, being a landlord. You don't want to have to evict anyone. So you just want to make the tenant happy. You want to be happy. And I know that you talked about doing the quarterly inspections, which would help with the amount in damages. So you said when you go through this process and you see that, okay, you let them have a dog and the dog chewed up the drywall or the trim or whatever in the quarterly inspection, you see that this needs to be repaired and you don't want to wait until they move out for that to happen. So how do you, okay, so the repair is $100 during the quarterly inspection. Is that due with the next month's rent? And if they don't pay it, the rent is $800, oh, I'll give you the $800 and I'll pay you for that repair later, and they don't do it, is that start an eviction process? How do you go about doing that to avoid all of those fees?
My contract states that you have to pay for that fee before, so if you give me rent, I'm going to deduct that fee, whether it's a utility bill, whether it's repair. I will deduct that before, so you're going to be short on your rent, not on the repair.
As long as your lease is specific like hers are, yes, you can do it. If your lease doesn't say that, damage to a property, unless it's intentional or severe, is not a breach of the lease. It comes out of the security deposit. That's the purpose of the security deposit. All my leases say the same thing, and pretty much every lease I've ever seen says the same thing. This is not an advance payment of rent. This is for damage to the property. The point is that you're holding this money for them so that they don't damage your property, not so that they can just not pay the last month's rent. So it just depends on what your lease says.
Quick attorney question. On auto payment, is it illegal to charge somebody's credit card after 5 days if they haven't paid for it?
Do you have authorization that allows you to do it?
If you write it into the lease, is that legal for auto payment on lease?
I would be careful. If they've made it clear that they don't want to pay you rent and you charge it anyway, yes, I would say that would be illegal. If you just have it set up on auto payment and you have no idea, again, I would be careful, but yes, that's probably okay. It just, again, it depends. But if they've made it clear to you that they don't want to pay rent, do not charge that card.
I know Adrian mentioned it earlier, and so did you, kind of taking the front door off to quote unquote paint it. And since they're not since they're not paying rent, but can you kind of talk about, you know, what you can't do trying to get rid of somebody?
Story you've heard, it's a story I've lived, unfortunately. I had a case like that in East Chicago where the property manager, and I won't tell you who it was, you probably know who it was, they took the door off of the property because the tenant would not move out. And they got pressed with criminal charges because you just can't do that. You cannot remove the property, or the doors, you can't remove the windows, you can't turn off the gas, the heat, the power, you can't change the locks. You have to get them out legally. If you don't, you can be charged with a criminal trespassing charge. It's not a joke. It's not something you want to deal with. And if your property manager does it, you can be on the hook for it. So that needs to be very, very clear. And unfortunately, I've had it more times than I care to choose. Fortunately, no one in this room. But yes, that is a big no-no in my world. Yeah.
Can a landlord use the security deposit for last month's rent if the tenant has not signed off on it?
Are they out of the property? You're talking, they owe you the money?
Let's say they're coming up to the last month of the lease and they're like, they haven't sent that month's payment in because it's always, you know, a month in advance.
Sure.
In Illinois, you can't use security deposit for rent. Unless the tenant sign, oh, Illinois is crazy.
More and more reasons why people are living in Illinois.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, you can use it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's a buffer.
Thank you.
The point of it is not for rent, but if you got damage, the point of it is for damage that's under your lease.
Yeah.
If unpaid rent is a damage under your lease, yeah, apply it.
Yeah.
John.
Is cash for keys really just as simple as cash for keys, or do you recommend getting some sort of signed, I waive all my rights to
Make them
whatever?
sign something.
Oh, we always do. I never give. No, I always make sure we sign.
And I tell her all the time, worst case scenario is you give them $500 or $100 or whatever it is to move out, and they're like, yeah, I'll move out. They move out, and then the next day they're still there.
They're not going to get anything from me till I walk through the property. So they're gonna be out before I
Right. Well,
give them.
if they come back and then you call the cops, the cops are gonna say they got a lease. Especially if you pay them in cash. Yeah,
with-
so
We
get
don't
it-
pay, we don't pay in cash.
Get in writing.
We write a check.
Get a complete
and a
waiver and
document.
release in writing.
Just covering
We
the
got about
track.
5 more minutes for questions, so make sure you have the mic to ask your questions so the Facebook people can hear.
So what will be the next step? I have a situation where the tenant stole the AC unit, refrigerator stove, and the judgment was won, right? But then they disappeared, so to speak.
Welcome to landlording, that's really all I can say. What you can do is there are ways, Skip Trace is great. Honestly, I use White Pages premium account. It's surprisingly effective. It's an account that I use just to kind of like track where these people have gone. I found a guy in Utah, got service on him. And then if they don't come, you can get a warrant issued for their arrest through a series of steps. Yeah.
So we talked a lot about evicting tenants, but the reality is that's a small percentage. So when you guys are looking to get tenants, how are you determining market rent? How much are you raising it yearly? As far as the financial end.
Watching other units that are listed in the area on a regular basis, and rental meters, pretty much that as well.
I was wondering if there was any longtime landlords who had a set rule about how long they let a tenant sit in that property, 2, 3 years, 5 years, because I've read some stories on the internet about letting tenants stay there in the first 2 or 3 years. They're pretty happy, but after the 3rd, 4th, 5th years, they start kind of not appreciating the places they're living in, and then, there's like one landlord who says, I just evict, 3rd year, that's it, I'm not renewing the lease, see you later. I'm wondering if anybody else has any of those kind of rules in their heads that follow that kind of guideline?
We have a program called 3-Star Resident, so every year that they renew their lease and they paid on time, we do something for them, that owner does something for them. So we usually try to pick something that betters the property. So they may want a front screen door, they might want a ceiling fan, or they may want something. So you're keeping them happy. You may say the 2nd year, at the end of a 3rd year, hey, we'd like to paint your house. You're going back and freshening it up. As long as you keep that tenant happy and they're a good tenant, you want to keep them happy so you don't have that turnover. So it really goes both ways. You have to look at, are you doing what you need to do to keep that tenant happy and want to stay there? Absolutely.
Yeah, I wouldn't think anything.
Vacancy kills your return.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
If somebody wanted to stay there for the rest of their life.
They're paying rent.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, and after a certain point in time, they look at it like it's their home anyway.
Right.
I mean, I've had a tenant in a place for 7 years, and she's never gonna move. That's fine. She can stay forever if she wants to. She's paying rent, so to me, that's a win.
I have a property right now, I'm the 4th owner for this tenant, she's been there 17 years.
Wow.
She has no desire to go.
Yeah.
And for me, there's 17 years of wear and tear there. For me to kick her out, I'm gonna have to put in $5,000, $6,000 to make it updated for the next person. To get what, an extra $100 a month in rent, it's not worth it. She's happy, she pays on time, drinks a lot of Miller Lite, great tenant.
Yeah, I have a quick question. In Indiana, what's the most you can charge a month for a late fee?
There's no number. I've seen people charge $10 a day. Usually a per diem, per day fee is pretty unreasonable, especially if it keeps going and then compounding on top of each other. It's a reasonableness standard. If you're renting a $4,000 a month property, your late fee is going to be more reasonable than if you're renting a $1,000 a month property. It's just it's a reasonable standard. There's really no set standard fee. No, I mean you can. It's not necessarily enforceable. Again, it's got to be reasonable. A judge won't enforce it otherwise.
And you write it.
Yeah. So like, let's say you write a $100 per day late fee. The No judge is going to enforce that. No, if it's $5 a day, maybe. I've seen, it just depends. Yeah, it's got to be reasonable. It's very reasonable.
So I have a question, going back to the make ready. So if you hire a contractor to do some work and he basically illegal dumps on someone else's property, and code enforcement comes by and they look in the pile and see that it comes from your address, are you legally liable for the legally dumping or the contractor?
You are not responsible for an independent contractor's actions unless it was directed by you. If you don't tell them to do it and they do it on their own, that's on them. You gotta convince code enforcement of that, but that's the rule.
We're getting there. Justin's not as fast as Tom.
I don't want to get sued if it hits her in my throat.
I have a comment and a question. My comment is, I don't charge late fees. I give them a discount if their rent is paid before the 1st. So if I want $800 rent, I charge them $850 or $900 if it's paid by the 1st, then they get that discount. If not, then they have to pay the full rent. That's great. And then when I go to court, I don't have to worry about late fees. Their rent is $850 and that's it.
I will tell you, it's looked at as the same thing. If you're doing it in reverse, it's essentially the same thing as late fees.
I have not ever had a problem.
No, I'm not saying you have a problem. I'm just saying from a standard of looking at it like late fee versus a discount. Well, at least Belzeski and Crown Point looks at it the same way.
My question for you is, have you noticed that courts now are giving tenants a longer time to get out due to this Matthew Desmond and his eviction, and 3 of the cities in this state have supposedly the highest evictions in the country?
I haven't. No. Crown Point. So there's the 2 courts: Magistrate Belzeski, Magistrate Pagano. They will give you a week, sometimes shorter. A little bit of it has to do with what kind of person you are. If you have kids or you're elderly, yeah, that's different. But if you're just coming in there and spouting off, I've seen her say, "Get out tomorrow." It just depends. They're not, if you're respectful and if you're a good property owner and you're taking care of your tenants and they're just not paying, probably a week, usually, I would say.
On the late fee, you have to ask yourself, what's the purpose of that late fee? Are you trying to give them a little bit of a penalty to incentivize them to pay? Or are you trying to smack them and make it impossible for them to pay so you can evict them? If that's the case, just hit them hard with a $150 late fee right away and evict them. But I've had lots of tenants where, something hits the fan and they, someone called, one of my managers called today, their car broke down and they are going to pay on Friday. Is that okay? Sure. Hit them with a $50 late fee, collect the rent, and they've been a great tenant. But then you have the habitual ones that are always paying, and you got to decide: are you trying to really spank them, or you just want to evict them? So let's give it up for our panel here.
One comment on what you just said. In your leases, please don't call it a penalty. Call it a penalty and they get a lawyer and they got a good lawyer, you're not going to get it. Call it a late fee. I know it's subtle, but there is a difference. Do not call it a late fee. Make sure you call it, do not call it a penalty, call it a late fee. That's it.
I have one point.
Go.
I just quickly want to say that, and again, I'm talking Illinois, and I'm not sure how it is in Indiana, but is it mandatory that you put have an interest-bearing account set up just for rent?
No, you don't have to have it. It doesn't have. They have to be separate. You can't hold your earnest money. You can't hold your security deposit in the same account as like your ops account, your operation account. It's got to be in a separate account. You can't commingle the 2, but it doesn't have to be interest bearing, no.
And you do have to write them a check on the interest at the end of the lease.
If it has interest, I would say yes. It depends what your lease says. But no, it doesn't have to be interest, so I would avoid the accounting headache that is.
How do they track that?
Chuck, what?
If you have it in a separate account, is it pretty much if you don't give it back,
Yeah.
then it's a problem?
If you don't give it back, or worse, you can't give it back.
Right. Then it's a problem.
Then that's a problem,
Okay.
and that's where you'll get caught up on it.
Yeah.
Mike is the attorney vendor for the group, so he has a bunch of cards on the table. He was a wealth of knowledge tonight on all the stuff that's going to protect our backsides. Those boilerplate leases and stuff that you get at Office Depot or Office Max, whatever it's called, probably not a good idea. Pay the whatever it costs to have Mike write you one that's specific for you, so you know when you're in court with him, the lease actually stands up and you can get done what you want to get done. The couple of dollars that you're saving by buying something cheap at Office Depot, you're losing in the long run when you can't get that person out quick enough. So give it up again to our panel. All right, let's jump into deals. Who has a deal? Let me switch to boom. So wholesalers, where are you? Someone has to have a property tonight. Here we go. Give us a 30-second rundown on what you have for us.
I have 7 parcels located in Gary, Indiana. 6 of them are townhomes. 1 of them is a single family. All on the west side historical district. The single family is in a historical district in Gary on McKinley. And the townhomes are located 3 on one side of the street, 3 on the other side on Ellsworth. I have pictures if you are interested. It is 20, the bundle package, $20,000.
Awesome. What's your name?
I'm Thomasina.
Cool. Catch Thomasina after the meeting if you're buying in Gary. Anyone else have anything that they're looking to sell? All the way in the back, Tom.
All right, I've got a place in Cedar Lake. It's in it's a small house. It's completely gutted out. It's just an exterior shell. $85,000. It is got true. It's not on the lake, but it has true lake rights. There's a real nice true homeowners association at the end of the block where they've got a park and a pier. $50 a year for the lake rights on it, and be able to put your boat out as an addition of $50. So for $100, you've got a spot to park your boat, enjoy the lake, and have a little lake house a couple doors off the lake.
South Shore?
No, it's not in South Shore. It's the address on it's 7502 West 136 Lane. So it comes in just south of Cedar Point Park.
Okay.
Anyone else have any deals?
Are we allowed to talk about something in Illinois, in Staber? Or
Sure.
That's state Northwest?
You may not have, I don't know. Yeah.
You may not have any, but I'm throwing out there. I can come here for
We
this.
stay on this side of the wall.
Yeah, I know. And most of I do, so, but this has happened. My partner and I just got this 2-unit in Staber. It's a 5-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,000 square feet. Long-term tenants, 1,000 rent, 500, so 1,500 a month total, and we're asking for 55,000.
Awesome. Well, next month is one of my favorite meetings of the year. This is our time to give back. Everyone in this room has been blessed quite a bit this year compared to other people probably not in this room. I was joking with someone earlier today that we all woke up on the right side of the grass today, so that's one big blessing. So this is our give back, and what we do a couple of things. One of the favorite parts of the meeting, we didn't do it tonight because I wanted to give a lot of time for Q&As. We do what's called success stories. This is someone who maybe flipped a property or did a burr on a rental. They'll come up, they'll talk for 8 to 10 minutes about the property, what their expectations were, what they went through. And it's completely opposite of what you see on TV, because what you see on TV is all the good stuff. But who's flipped in here? A lot of people. It's not as easy as they make it look on TV. So these are real stories, real things that happen that were unexpected, and it's a great way to learn from things that they encountered. So I'm looking for 5 to 6 people that did something this year that can talk about one of their deals. Really easy to put together a PowerPoint, talk about what you did. Catch me after if you're interested in doing that. They're going to have tons of giveaways. I think we have about a dozen vendors for the group. Mike's one of our vendors. Out in the hall, make sure you catch up with Teresa. She's with Midland. They do IRA accounts so you can invest with your retirement. They also do the 1031 exchanges. So if you're selling a property, you can dump the money into the 1031 and then roll it into another property and delay capital gains. So vendors are going to have giveaways. We're going to do all sorts of giveaways, raffles, all night. A couple of different ways you can get tickets. Everyone will get a ticket for being here, bringing guests. But we're going to give away a ton of stuff. And most importantly, we do a food drive collection. The first year we did it, we got about 400 items of food, cans and boxes of all that. Last year we were right at 1,000. This year we're looking to get 2,000 items of food. So, you know, go in your pantry. Don't bring me the expired stuff that's all dusty in the back. But we're going to donate that to a food pantry in Hampton. And they go, I forgot what they go through, but they go through a lot of food every year. So we're looking to collect the 2,000 items, so bring a big bag. If you don't want to bring it that night, you can drop it off to our office in Highland anytime between now and next month. And that will be a huge blessing to, what's that one called, Justin? Are you going? It's the one up on Caring Hands on Soul Street? Yeah. Yep. So big, they do a lot with food pantry, kitchen, all that. So that's next month on the 16th, I believe. So we still got plenty of cookies, plenty of pizza. Network, stay a little bit. We have the room until 9:30.
What's that? Amy, I'm sure nice to meet you. So what do you do?
Landlord.
How long have you been doing that?
Oh, let's see, 28 years.
How many units you have?
Just one right now.
One? Oh, wow, you've been one for 28 years.
I have had this one for 28 years.